As fires fade and the world falls into ruin, developer FromSoftware and director Hidetaka Miyazaki continue their critically acclaimed and genre-defining series with Dark Souls 3. Fans and newcomers alike will get lost in the game's hallmark rewarding gameplay and immersive graphics. Now, only embers remain. Hello and welcome back to the neighborhood, and welcome to the third episode of Dark Souls Month. We're trying something new this month. For the first 3 weeks of April, we'll be releasing episodes on Dark Souls, Dark Souls 2, and Dark Souls 3. After that, we'll be doing an episode where we rank all of the FromSoft games and discuss those rankings. And the final episode of April will be a community discussion of Souls-like games. So now, let's dive into the final title in the trilogy, Dark Souls 3.
Dark Souls 3 is an action role-playing game developed by FromSoftware and published by Bandai Namco Entertainment for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Windows. The third and final entry in the Dark Souls series, it is played in a third-person perspective. The players have access to various weapons, armors, magic, and consumables that they can use to fight their enemies. Hidetaka Miyazaki, the creator of the series, returned to direct the game after handing the development duties of Dark Souls 2 to others. Dark Souls 3 was critically and commercially successful, with critics calling it a worthy and fitting conclusion to the series. It shipped over 3 million copies within the first 2 months and over 10 million by 2020. 2 downloadable content expansions, Ashes of Arendelle and The Ringed City, were also released.
For this series, we'll be tackling these games as if we were playing through them, taking the conversation one area or level at a time, and then discussing the boss at the end. This will allow us to cover the whole game while also keeping the conversation somewhat structured. Spoilers ahead, be warned. We've given a spoiler warning for the last 2 episodes. Same thing applies here. We'll be talking freely about Dark Souls 3. Dylan, we finally made it. Dark Souls 3, the final game.
Yeah.
The end of the trilogy. The culmination of the story.
On the one hand, I'm kind of like, it's kind of a bummer there won't be other Dark Souls games, supposedly. But on the other hand, it's like, I mean, I feel like there isn't just a single Elden Ring game either. Maybe, but clearly not making Dark Souls games didn't hamper FromSoft's ability to make a cool fantasy like medieval RPG. So
right, yeah. We may not get another Dark Souls, but Dark Souls is really the only series FromSoft has made in this style, I guess.
Yeah, like
that has
before
had
people
sequels.
jump in the comments and are like, but Armored Core.
Yeah, exactly.
But also all of these other games that you don't mention ever.
Yeah, no, it like Demon Souls, single, Bloodborne single, Sekiro single, Elden Ring single so far. And they say that it's going to stay that way. We'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the game that put FromSoftware from good developer with a solid following to into the stratosphere. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they dip back into that well. But currently, Elden Ring is a one-off.
Yeah.
So Dark Souls 3.
Good game.
This game is good. This game is great. This game, if you were to have asked me, let's say a third of the way through my replay, how it was going, I may have had different feelings. I feel like Dark Souls 3 has grown on me a lot over this playthrough. Over watching, like over the last week or so, I've just pretty much only been watching lore videos for the Dark Souls 3 DLC and Dark Souls 3 and how it wraps up the trilogy. And just, I understand the story of 3 a lot better now, and I understand the story of the series a lot better, and like the different ages and the cycles and the things that are happening and why these bosses are where they are in this game and why the world is the way it is and how you're kind of traveling through different points in history because time is kind of folded on itself in weird ways. And Dark Souls 3 feels the best to play. I mean, it's the newest.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I mean, like, I feel like there's a distinct line in the FromSoftware catalog where before that line feels like an old game, and then after that line feels much more modern. And I think that line is Bloodborne.
Yeah.
Like, I think Bloodborne and up feels pretty good to still go back and play, and still looks pretty good when you go back and play it. The people who are, you know, think that a game is only good if it runs at 60 frames per second may disagree, but
which Dark Souls 3 does.
Yeah, Dark Souls 3 does, but Bloodborne doesn't.
No.
You know, these are games that came out on like PS4, Xbox One, like that era, and on. And so to me, they still feel like a very modern game, you know? Like, obviously, it's hard to say for sure in hindsight, but I feel like if we didn't have Elden Ring to compare it to, if Dark Souls 3 came out today, it would still be pretty well regarded.
Yes, there's definitely some ugly character models and like texture work and stuff, but it's still that classic FromSoft environments and world building and scale, and
still feels excellent to play.
And yeah, so for this series, for Dark Souls month, like I've said before multiple times at this point, I played through Dark Souls 1 and beat it for the first time. I immediately from there jumped into Dark Souls 3, and the difference in how the game feels is astounding. Like, your role is so much more snappy. Everything just feels way more modern, way more like you feel way more in control of your character, which helps in games like these, because the other side of that coin is that all of the enemies and bosses also feel way more precise and honed in. So where you could just circle knights in Dark Souls 1 until you got that like awkward angle to be able to pull off a backstab, that does not work in 3. You have to, they have to be open. You have to bait the attack and get behind them, and it all has to be very intentional.
Yeah.
But that was the first thing I noticed booting up this game and running through that like first area was, this feels good. I also love seeing all of the Bloodborne in this game, like aesthetically. There's a lot of there's creatures and things that feel like they were left over from Bloodborne or something like that.
I was gonna say there's like a particular like few levels that it's very much just like, this feels very Bloodborne.
Yes,
it is the one that feels like, if you've never played any Dark Souls games and you are for some reason listening to this and you're like, I kind of want to try out a Dark Souls game, this is the one that you should pick up and try.
Yes.
Start here.
1 did a lot of really cool things for its time, has a lot of really cool ideas, was instrumental in pioneering this genre. 2 did some odd experimentation, has some interesting ideas that have carried forward like we discussed in our last episode. But 3 is undeniably the smoothest modern gaming experience of the 3.
Yes.
Like, there's no argument. Like, you can debate level design and you can debate interconnectivity of world and you can debate lore and all those kind of things across all 3 of them. But you can't really debate that this is the best starting point for a new person in the series, because it is the most modern, feels the best, has the best quality of life. It is just across the board the most optimized, I guess. It is the place to start if you're coming to this series brand new. And then if you like it, if you manage to power through it, go back and play 1 and 2 and appreciate the oddities. And you'll see what you were saying about that line in FromSoft games of going back to, there are certain ones that just feel old.
Yeah, like 1 and 2 feel like old games. And this is the first one that we're going to get to talk about where it's like, this, like 1 and 2 I've gone back and played just because I have nostalgia for them. This one I would legitimately go back and play for fun. Like, if I want to break from like Elden Ring and I choose Dark Souls 3 over Bloodborne for some reason, like that, it would still be a good game. There are frustrations that we will talk about, but most of those frustrations are like, this boss is really hard, not, oh, I have to level adaptability, or like, oh, this feels weird, like just how this game is, or, ooh, this is like kind of an ugly looking game.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier, kind of, if you had asked me, I may have felt differently a third of the way through my playthrough. Dark Souls 3, I really like the beginning and end.
Yeah, the middle drags a little bit.
There is some stuff in the middle that I find, dragging, frustrating, like different ways that you can describe it. But the beginning I feel is really strong, and the end I feel is basically, I like being in castles and stuff and exploring fortresses and things like that, as opposed to,
you don't like the poison swamp,
being underground or being in a swamp, or those kind of parts of Dark Souls are not my favorite. And there's a big chunk kind of in the middle where that is what you're doing.
Yeah.
But let's kick it off. You start in the Cemetery of Ash. So you in this game, you are the Unkindled, which is apparently an undead that failed to kindle the flame and died, and then was reborn of ash and comes back. And so you get to make your character. You're in basically your little tutorial area, your starting zone. And typical FromSoft, there's some easy enemies. There's messages on the ground explaining how the game works. There's a tough enemy you can fight off to the side that will give you some rewards. And then you walk through. It's really short, probably one of the shortest.
I was going to say, if you wanted to, you could kind of just run straight to the boss in probably 30 seconds. It is not long at all.
And they give you a bonfire kind of right out of the gate, which is interesting. And then, you fight your first boss, which is
Iudex Gundyr.
Yeah, I don't know if it's pronounced like Iudex, Gundyr, who is a pretty solid skill check if you've never played a Souls game. If you're familiar with Souls games and bosses like this, he's not bad. He has a phase 2 kind of transition that can up the difficulty, but he's one of those bosses I find that kind of rewards being aggressive and staying up close. And if you do that, it's not too bad.
And they give you a decent amount of like Estus right out of the gate. Like you've got 3 or 5 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
It's definitely one that I feel like, newer players, it might get you a few times, but like it doesn't have just a crazy amount of moves. It doesn't have anything that's like too tricky.
It's a big knight.
Yeah.
With a big halberd, and it's pretty telegraphed.
Yeah, it telegraphs pretty well, but it does a good job, I think, of like showing you like this is how these bosses tend to work. And
exactly. It's like it's a really good tone setter for what you can expect for the rest of the game. It's not a skill check necessarily. Like you're going to hit some bosses that are intended to be skill checks. But this is like hey, this is what this game is. We're going to show it to you right up front and get ready.
Exactly. And for beating him, you get a sword, which I think is interesting because I know like at some point there was some like discussion of like in Dark Souls 3, you were going to get to like place your bonfire, and like the sword that you get from this guy was going to be like how you made your own bonfires in the world. But they did eventually Like, that didn't end up making it into the final game, but I remember like reading some previews or watching like a Vati or a Zuli video about like that, what like some of that still is in the like remains in the code. It just never was taken out, but it's not like active.
Interesting idea.
Yeah.
Because you get the coiled sword, which is the sword that's sticking out of the bonfire in all of these games, and you use that to light the main bonfire in Firelink Shrine, which is where you go right after this. You do get the coiled sword as a weapon beating the endgame boss.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a cool idea. It's interesting that they still didn't go with a system like that in Elden Ring, in like an open world game where you're doing like where you could just kind of essentially make camp.
Exactly.
I'm sure there are maybe creative and technical reasons why they didn't like just let you place bonfires, and they opted to just have predetermined like sites of grace.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you know, at least in Elden Ring, what would be the point of them? Like the main thing people would want it for is so that you didn't have a long boss run. But after, like in Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring, really, like there aren't really any terrible boss runs for the most part.
I mean, they have like multiple, I guess it's really only two things in Elden Ring that prevent boss runs. They have the like Stake of America, and then they have the Sites of Grace.
Yeah.
It could have very easily been, well, I say very easily, but like another option could have been, oh, I'm just going to set my bonfire right here outside the boss door. But instead of doing that, they did the like Stakes of America, which it works fine.
Exactly.
It's not a problem, but it is interesting to think about what that could have looked like if they'd let you. But yeah, either way, you go through, you explore a little bit more of this kind of like decrepit area, and then you go into Firelink Shrine, and Firelink Shrine in 3 is much more of a hub, hunter's dream, round table hold. Like, this is where your blacksmith is right out of the gate. This is where your level up waifu is, your what do they call her in this? I want to say the maiden, but that's Demon Souls.
The
Firekeeper. That's right.
Yep.
And this is where like some NPCs will be. This is where you have to bring the Lords of Cinder back to their thrones so that you can rekindle the flame. Like, everything kind of centers around this Firelink Shrine. This is where you're forced to come back to level up, which was an interesting choice. It's not interesting for this game specifically. It's just interesting that after 1, where you could level up at the bonfire, that they decided to go, you know what? Nah, for 2 and 3 and Bloodborne, we're going to make you go back to your hub, and then Elden Ring will let you do it at the bonfire again, because we're going to let you bring your level up girl with you.
Exactly.
She's in your pocket.
Yeah. So, Firelink Shrine, that, if you've been listening to these, Firelink Shrine is technically the same Firelink Shrine as the first game? Yes? No? You're the one that's been watching the lore videos?
I don't know.
Like, this is some weird time thing?
Yeah, I don't know that I assume it is.
Like, it looks different, obviously.
It looks different, but like, so when you see, the thing is, I sided with, what's his name? Karth, the serpent that's in the depths.
Okay.
And so I did that ending in Dark Souls 1.
Yeah.
If you side with Frampt, he pulls you underground, and that's where you like kindle that bonfire. So maybe that like underground section in 1 is kind of what this is supposed to mirror. I don't know. I didn't catch up on that specific aspect of it, but essentially it serves the same purpose of like, this is where the chosen undead has to do the thing in order to access the kiln of the first flame, in order to decide, you know, what they're going to do with the future of this world.
Yeah. And it is the first of several that like places from older games that will make an appearance in at least name. One of the cool things about 3, and one of the criticisms, depending on which side you land on, is that 3 it's a sequel to 1, very specifically,
But it also, watching a lot of these lore videos, is a sequel to 2. There's a lot of stuff in 2 that is also carried through in 3. Some people argue that it leaned too much into nostalgia. You know, it's the whole kind of Star Wars, whatever, episode 7 thing where it's like, oh, it's just A New Hope again. But because these games are so like vague and obtuse anyways, you kind of have to be you have to be pretty deep into the like fandom to even appreciate any of that.
Yeah.
And also because Dark Souls, the idea of is that this is a cyclical world where the gods rise to power, they love their age, they hate humanity, which humanity is born from the undead, from the hollows. And so they are, the intended thing that is supposed to happen is that there will be an age of fire, followed by an age of dark, and then the age of like mankind.
Yeah.
And the gods always get greedy, and they always say, you know what, we're going to keep the age of fire going as long as we can, which ends up distorting and perverting the world.
Yep.
And that's kind of where you come in. And then it's your character that forces the gods, usually by killing them all, to usher in the new age. And so the new age in 2 was the Age of Dark. Or actually, I think you came into the Age of Dark in 2.
Yeah.
And then you brought in like the Age of Humanity or whatever. And then in 3, you're kind of back at that. You're in like another cycle.
Yeah.
So you're seeing things from 1, but in a different part of that cycle.
Right.
Like in 1 where things were a little bit more still active. Like you kind of force the cycle forward sooner in the timeline in 1 than you do in 3. In 3, things have gone way further off the rails than they did in 1. So you get to see a lot of stuff in 3 further down the timeline than it was in 1. And you also get to see something that I thought was really cool that I appreciated after watching some of the lore videos is like each of the Lords of Cinder has rekindled the flame at some point to keep this age going. And so when you're going through Faerun, you're kind of seeing their kingdom and ultimately like where they ended up when they finally fell. And then when you move on to the next area, you're seeing like where they were, like Yorm when he rekindled and his, but it's like a different part of history.
Right.
You're going through it all kind of back to back to back, but each of these zones is telling like a different story and a different time in history.
Yeah. It's like you're taking like
it's like a
history
tour
class.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, for the next 2 weeks, we're covering World War One, and then the next 2 weeks we're covering World War Two, and then the next 2 weeks we're covering, I forget which war came after that, the Cold War.
Yeah, and like the game doesn't tell you that.
Yeah,
you just think you're running through all these areas and killing these bosses unless you're paying attention.
Which you don't have to get into the story. Like, no, you can enjoy this game without any of that.
Which is how I enjoyed. Yeah, how I've enjoyed every FromSoft game. For me, like FromSoft games are it's like a 2-step process. The first step is playing the game and enjoying the gameplay. Yeah. And then the second step is just basically taking just auditing a college level course on what happened in the game. Yeah. And 3 is the one that grabbed me because it ties everything together. Yeah.
3 is kind of the condensed, like, I don't want to learn all of the separate lore about 1 and 2, so I'll just take 3 and it'll tell me the lore that I need to know from 1 and 2.
Exactly. And it puts a bow on everything. It culminates it all. And I watched a bunch of lore videos the first time I played through this game. Yeah. And I didn't get it. But I think going through and playing 1 again and finishing it and now seeing Aldrich and how his top half is Gwendolyn. Yeah. Like those kind of things, I connect those dots a lot easier having seen Gwendolyn in Dark Souls 1. And so, but yeah, the reason that all of the Lords of Cinder are now awake and alive and existing in this weird world of multiple timelines is because they were all reawakened. Yeah. When the bell was rung. And
the bell from 1?
I think it's a bell in 3 that rings before you are awakened. And so they all got reawoken they're supposed to basically do their job again.
Yeah.
And they don't want to. And that's why they're all just kind of sitting in their own personal throne rooms, just like, no, we're just gonna live here, I guess. And then it's you going through, and they all got reawoken to come back to Firelink Shrine and sit on their thrones.
Yeah,
and they're supposed to sit on their thrones and open the gate to allow the first flame to be rekindled, or whatever choice ends up happening, and they don't want to do it. And so it's your job to go find them and bring them back to their thrones. They're not going to come with you holding your hand, so you have to go kill them and basically put their heads on their thrones, except for the one little scrawny guy that sells you boss weapons. He is a lord who rekindled the flame.
Yeah.
And he has, like, prepare to cry lore on him too. But he's like, hey, I'm good. I'm sitting here. I'm doing my thing. We need to end this thing. So,
well, and it's an interesting thing too, because it's like, okay, like, I'm sure ultimately you did need all of them to, like, do the thing. But it's an interesting thing where it's like, yeah, I'm actually not going to rekindle the flame. So you guys were kind of in the right, but I killed you anyway. But I think you need them to open, like, the portal
to open the door to get exactly
to the first flame or whatever.
Yeah,
so
to get to the kiln. Yeah.
Yeah. But
and then
it is one of those things where it's just like, if this was like some big, like, BioWare RPG or like good BioWare RPG, there would have been, like, dialogue options where it's like, look, I'm not trying to, like, I'm trying to start, like, end the cycle, guys. So, like, just come with me willingly,
Yeah, I mean, and it also depends on the Lord.
Yeah.
And because, like, Lorien and Lothric, they refused to kindle their flame, like, to do their job, and there's just a lot of really cool lore in 3, but it also ties into 1 and 2 in really cool ways, and then the DLCs kind of expand even on that a little bit in cool ways. So I got nerdy about 3.
Yeah.
And it made me appreciate 1 and 2 more. It made me appreciate 3 more. But as far as gameplay goes,
yeah,
you get Firelink Shrine all set up. They tell you got to go find the Lords of Cinder. You got to bring them back to their throne, and you head out. Yeah,
which heading out was a little confusing for me at first, because, like, when I played this game when I first bought it in, like, 2007 or whenever it came out.
No,
not 2007, like 2017.
Yeah, I think 2000.
Maybe
2016, 17, something like that. Yeah.
But every other Dark Souls game,
you just walk.
You just walk to the next zone. And so I remember the first time, like, wandering around Firelink Shrine a bunch, being like, am I missing it? Where am I supposed to go? Am I supposed to, like, be able to make this jump here? Like,
really cool katana you can fight by defeating a tough enemy around the corner. If you're doing a dex build, you can cheese him and try to kick him off the edge or fight him straight up. But yeah, you teleport from the bonfire.
You go to the bonfire and you can teleport from it.
Which makes more sense if you came from Bloodborne.
Yeah.
Because you teleport from the dream. But yeah, comparing it just to Dark Souls 1 and 2.
Yeah, which were the only ones I had played at the time.
Yeah, in those games, you just leave your hub and you just walk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a little confusing. It was also interesting, too, because there is only one place you can go. I think, like Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, there are multiple directions. So this one is a little bit more linear than...
It's a lot more linear.
Yeah.
Dark Souls 3 is pretty, like, it is linear.
It has some side paths, but it doesn't have, like, here are
optional
two zones that you can go. Like, here are 2 zones that you need to go to, both of which are available to you. It's pretty much like, no, here's a little side optional thing that you can do if you want to.
There are complaints about 3, and this is one of them from the diehards, that yes, it is a linear game compared to the other ones that had more player choice and agency in how you tackled the game. And yes, you fast travel a lot. in Dark Souls 3. And so the levels feel a lot less connected, a lot more disjointed. They all do kind of connect end to end to each other. Like you could theoretically hop in and run from one end of the game to the other for the most part, but it's not really a world that you could think about and be like, oh, that makes sense. I see how this like lays out and is
right.
Like Dark Souls 1 is still probably the best that they've ever done for that outside of Elden Ring, which is a literal open world.
Yeah.
Because we talked about 2 having like a lava level like in the sky. 3 isn't quite that video gamey, but it feels kind of like just one long strip of levels that you're running through.
Yeah. It reminds me of the runway in that one Fast and the Furious movie.
that just keeps
going on for like 30 minutes of the movie.
It is interesting to see, like, in some of these videos zoomed out, if you zoom out of, like, Irithyll and you see, like, Anor Londo and all that kind of, like, it is a world and is connected because in some of these early zones that we're going to talk about, like the Undead Settlement and whatnot, there's that giant that's shooting the giant bolts, and he'll be able to shoot those bolts through, like, the first 2 or 3 levels that you're at. And so even though you feel like you're going through these not so connected levels, that giant still has sight of you. Like there is some connectivity and there is some pretty cool cohesion to this world, but it's nothing like 1.
Yeah, like 1, everything definitely felt like it flowed a lot more naturally from one zone to the other. 2 was kind of just like a video game. And then 3, there's usually like a stretch of like 3 is very similar to 2, I think, a lot of times in how its levels are laid out, but it's way more believable than like, hey, this lava level was actually floating above you the entire time.
Yeah, so you fast travel to the High Wall of Lothric, and there's something about the beginning of FromSoft games that I just love. And I think part of it is because it doesn't matter your build. It doesn't matter. Like, you're starting off on a level playing field, no matter what. And so, like, and it also is introducing you to how the world works, how the, like, shortcuts are going to work, how the level design works, and how the enemies function. And so, like, Yharnam, love it. The High Wall of Lothric, like, I really like.
It's a very good level.
This area, it's a castle. The first castle in Demon Souls, like the first level in Demon Souls, I really like.
And I have played through some of that zone.
Yeah,
and this it feels very similar to this.
Yeah, Lothric does kind of harken back to that Demon Souls castle level. So basically, you're running around on top of a castle wall. You're fighting enemies. You're, a lot of it's kind of like Dark Souls 1, the Undead Burg, and you're killing hollows. You're fighting your way through. You find some shortcuts that loop back around each other. You dodge a dragon. Like, that's a lot of there's a lot of nostalgia here already. Like, right out the gate.
Chewie, we're home.
There's a couple checks in this level. There's the first time you come across like a knight in that room that I was like, oh yeah, the knights in this game are no joke. Like, compared to previous games.
Yes.
And then there's the really big guy that's just circling that one.
It's like a bonfire or something, but not like a bonfire you rest at. It's like a it was like a scene of a battle, and he's the only one left. And there's some items in there, so you can kind of run around in there and get them. There are also a lot of like NPCs that will just, or like other enemies that will just kind of pop up if you don't take them out first. Yeah,
it's that area that's designed to teach you to run. Because you're really not supposed to fight in there yet.
Yeah.
Once you navigate through all of this, you end up in it's
like a set of stairs.
There's stairs that go up and stairs that go down, and it's a really cool thematic location that you don't really appreciate until later, because essentially there are the 2 eyes of Pontiff Sylvan that are protecting your pathways forward through the game from here.
Yeah.
And the first one you go to is the Vort of the Boreal Valley.
Yes.
Which is this, like, he used to be a knight, but now he's become a monster. He crawls around on all fours and charges you. Yeah.
And a big mace.
And he's not terrible.
No. I was going to say, the worst part about it is like the frostbite or whatever, the ice thing, which can like take a decent chunk of your health away, and I think it like messes with your stamina regen. But most of his moves are pretty, like, unless you just get like steamrolled by his charge moves, usually his moves are not too bad. They're pretty telegraphed, and they hit hard, but they don't hit as hard as, like, it's not going to one-shot you, basically.
And there's something there's a different version of it in every Dark Souls game.
Yeah.
In this game, you have embers because you're the unkindled one. And so the ember is essentially your humanity. What it does is when you have an ember, when you're embered, your character will have like little glowing kind of singes on them, and you will have more health. And you will be able to see summon signs.
Yep.
And you can summon for this fight. There's an NPC that you can summon that helps a lot just to kind of pull aggro, and then it's not too bad. No. So you beat him, and if you didn't do it before, like I did on my most recent playthrough, you have to go up all the steps and go talk to an old lady to get a banner. And that's harder than the boss because there's more knights patrolling that area.
There's like 4 knights in there. It's just like, uh-oh.
So you get the banner, you go back down, you fly the banner on the edge, and you get picked up by the gargoyles from Dark Souls 1, and they carry you down to where the real game
it's begins. Like that meme with Leonardo DiCaprio from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where you're just like looking at the TV. If you've played one, you're like, it's the thing. It's
exactly that. I mean, that happens a lot in this game, and this was one of the first times coming fresh off of 1 for this Dark Souls month and seeing them. I was like, oh, that's the exact same. Because before, I mean, I didn't catch a lot of this stuff because I didn't have a nostalgia for 1. I didn't really remember the things in 1 that this game was pulling from, but like having just played it, was like, oh yeah, oh now I see why it's like such a big deal that you're fighting Havel again, those kind of things. So then you end up in the undead settlement,
which not like, I forget what, like undead ruins, undead whatever, like undead Berg, like there's been a bunch of different starting like pretty early zones that are undead something. Kind of another callback. It is kind of like a burned out, battle torn village.
Feels very Bloodborne.
Yeah. It mostly like the Witches of Hemwick sort of situation.
It really reminds me of the Forbidden Woods or Forbidden Forest and the Witches of Hemwick area. A lot of like burning buildings and burning bodies and pyres and
there's some sort of, it looks like some sort of like
stuff happening.
Yeah, Inquisition-y type of thing has been like going on here.
This zone is huge.
Yeah, I was gonna say this zone feels so much bigger than so many of the other zones
because it is, and because this is kind of where you get to make your choice of. Like, you don't really get to choose where you want to go to progress the game. Like, it all, ultimately, there is, like, the boss, and that will kind of progress things. But you can go, like, you can go...
like 2 or 3 ways that you can...
You can go towards, like, the elevator where the Onion Knight is, which will lead you to the next zone. So, technically, you could kind of just skip this zone, I guess, and skip the boss.
Yeah.
And go...
Well, because the boss is an optional boss.
Yeah, you can go down where you meet Henri and all them. Henri and Horus, the straight up berserk character.
Yeah.
And so, but you can also, you can go down kind of into this like sewer path. You can go up into the tower and befriend the giant, which is definitely worth doing because then he can help, like, his arrows can either hurt you throughout the game or they can just hurt your enemies. And if they just hurt your enemies, it's a lot nicer.
Yes.
So you can go up, you befriend him, you can loop around, you can go under. This is where there's like an NPC under in the sewer area that you can rescue, but you have to buy the key from the lady in Firelink. It's just a really big zone with a lot of enemies. I had a frustrating moment on my replay where I had like enough souls to level up a couple times. And I was on my lunch break from work and I booted up the game and I was like, I'm just going to kind of poke around in this area. I went to the spot where Sigurd is and he is like, I don't want to go fight this demon down here because it looks scary. And I was like, well, I'll go fight this demon. And then he's like, oh man, you're crazy. Let me help you. And so he goes down and he helps you fight the demon, and that went fine. And that demon gave me enough souls to like level up a couple times. Well, as I was exploring around that area, I ended up dying somehow. I can't remember if I fell off something or if I got overrun, whatever. So then I ran back through, and instead of taking my time and killing things like I was supposed to, I was like, I'm going to try to run back to my souls and get them. Well, there's those like big fat witch ladies, and they didn't kill me. They happened to hit me just right to knock me out of a doorway, off of a balcony, and onto the ground, which killed me. And I lost all those souls, and I was like, well, time to go back to work. And I'm going back to work frustrated. And that was the last time I played Dark Souls on my lunch break. And I was like, I'm not going to do this to myself again.
Yeah, because this zone definitely, there can be a lot of points where it feels almost like a war of attrition.
Yes.
Where it's, the
There's
zone
mobs.
itself is not, the enemies themselves that you fight are not difficult by themselves.
No.
But it throws a bunch of them in groups, and also you're still fairly early on in the game, so you don't have a ton of Estus flasks yet. And the bonfires are just far enough apart that like at this point in the game, you're probably hitting that bonfire with no more Estus left. And it can be very, it's that part of the game that a lot of us love, where it's kind of like that risk reward sort of thing. Like, okay, I've got enough souls to level up. Do I go back to the bonfire and let everything respawn, but now I've leveled up? Or do I keep pushing forward and potentially lose everything because I want to, I can do it, And it does a very good job of that. But yeah, there were definitely some like kind of like gank fights that happen in this zone. There's one spot in particular where there's just like a bunch of like little assassin dudes on like a rooftop, and you kind of like run up to attack a guy, and then like 5 assassin dudes jump down and are like just ganking you. And it teaches you to take your time.
Yeah, exactly. You need to pay attention to your surroundings, take it slow. Vibes wise, really like this level. Like I like the tone of it, exploring it, but yes, there's definitely some frustration points. The boss.
Yes.
So the boss of this area is a giant tree with pus balls that you have to hit.
Yeah, it's pretty gross.
Kind of a gimmick fight. There's like some regular enemies in the arena with you that it can hurt, but can also hurt you. So it's just kind of like you got to keep an eye on them, but mostly you're focusing on these like sacks.
Because the first thing is like clearing out the other enemies. And then, it's got these like white balls all over it.
Yeah.
And so it's like, there's some on it like its feet, there's some like on its legs, there's some on its hands or whatever. And so like when it slams its hand down, you have like a few seconds to run in there and try to like burst it. And that's what does, like, you can technically, I think, just like whittle its health down.
I don't know if you can.
I'm not 100% on that. I don't know
if you can damage it just hitting it. But
yeah, it may have to be the little, but like every time you burst one, it takes a big
huge
chunk of damage.
Yeah.
It's also partway through the fight, it gets mad, stands up, sits back down, and breaks the floor, which you then fall down.
Yeah.
And you're in now this like arena with like no cover, and not like, I always have just kind of like gotten a a bow and arrow and kind of just like kited this boss once I get down there, where I'll like he'll break the floor and then like I'll run away from him, and while he like stands up to come like walk over to you, I'll like be sniping him with a bow and arrow to like burst the little pustules, and then he dies eventually.
Yeah, I fought him straight up, but I had sword and shield. I was strength for this build, and it was a bit of attrition, but it wasn't like I never felt really like in a ton of danger. When basically he has some balls on his stomach that are the most dangerous to hit, because he can do like I can't remember if he releases like a mist or if he like can grab you, or there's some that's like a dangerous spot to stand.
Yeah, well, like you can get hit by a bunch of different attacks there, but he also does a move that damages your weapons and armor. Like it
Oh yeah.
I forget what they call it in this game, but like it decays them or something, and so like they can break, which means they basically stop doing damage and stop protecting you.
Yeah. But if you can pop those early, then it's just a matter of running around and hitting the other ones, and they're not nearly as dangerous. But
yeah. It's reminiscent of like the Hydra fights almost in Dark Souls 1.
Yeah, it's interesting. The coolest part is kind of like when the floor breaks. It's like, I wasn't expecting that. That was cool. But yeah, it's optional. Where you're supposed to go to progress the game next is the Road of Sacrifice, which
it's the beginning of sort of the Bloodborne levels.
Yes,
a little bit.
Yeah, there's some definite like the
big werewolf,
the like cross-bearing, monster guys. They're very Bloodborne-ish, but this is kind of like Baby Swamp.
Yeah.
Like first you run.
It's not poison.
No, you run through the area with the bird people.
Yes.
And they can be kind of annoying, but it's not too bad.
Yeah, they're pretty weak. Like if you're just aggressive with them, like you can usually kill them before they have a chance to do any big moves.
And then there's the like part with the dogs that is meant to gank you, but if you know like the little path to drop on and run around, it's not too bad. Then there's the main area, which is it's a swamp that slows your movement but doesn't poison you.
Yeah.
Some big old crabs in there.
Yes.
There's a little castle kind of rundown fort that you can explore that has like some casters and stuff in it. That's where there's an NPC that I couldn't really do anything with because my intelligence was too low.
Yep.
But he's like the intelligence, like sorcery guy. And then
there's like a couple of different ways that you can go in this part.
This is where you can go either, to the Farron Woods, or
you can keep going further towards the cathedral.
You can go to the Cathedral of the Deep, which I went Cathedral.
Yeah. I think I've always gone Cathedral of the Deep here too, just because it's not like, to me, it always just felt more natural to go that way. And also like the boss of fight for Cathedral of the Deep is kind of gimmicky. Like you don't need to have leveled up. Like it's not like a DPS check. It's more of like okay, I'm going to go do this gimmicky fight, and then like I'll have a bunch more souls to level up, so that Farron Keep is a little bit easier.
It's much better to have more levels going through Farron.
Yeah,
with like the poison swamp and some of the enemies in there, but the cathedral level is rough. So the boss, before we get there, the boss of
Road of Sacrifice
is the Crystal Sage, which is kind of a gimmick fight.
Yeah.
Like it killed me once because what it does in phase 2 is it clones itself, and the clones can all shoot like legit spells. But they take one hit to die, so if you can kind of knock them down quick, it's not too bad.
Yeah, and there's some like cover that is eventually like getting degraded. And so like if you can do it fast enough that you still have some cover, like you can use that to your advantage as he does it again. But
not bad.
No.
And then you can either go from that boss to the Cathedral of the Deep, or you can go to Farron. I go to Cathedral, which first you kind of run through like this path full of,
it's like the skeleton
the little mutated zombies, that like have little dogs coming out of their guts and stuff. Kind of annoying, but you can run through it. This area is cool in how basically it all leads back to the same chapel bonfire. And so it's got that kind of Demon Souls Bloodborne-y, like we're going to have one central bonfire that everything loops back to layout. Walk through, save my bacon on this one, because there's enemies that will just put worms on you that will cause you to like build up bleed.
Yes.
If you have a torch, they immediately jump off of you.
Yeah. You pull out the torch and they go away.
So,
which, if you don't know that,
you just
sucks
stand,
to not know.
You just stand there like taking bleed damage. Yeah.
Yes.
So, and this is not my favorite level.
No.
Like, I don't love the run up to the cathedral. I don't like the Cathedral of the Deep. Feels kind of like it has that Dark Souls 1 we're trying to screw you mentality. Like, there's getting into the cathedrals, a lot of those little like assassin guys trying to jump on your head. There's stuff trying to knock you off ledges.
Yeah.
There's archers shooting at you as you're running across little pathways. There's tough enemies hitting you in pairs. Like, it's just very trappy.
Yeah.
And then that continues once you get inside.
Yeah, I was going to say, you get inside and then there's like giants that are inside, like chained up, but their hands are still free. So
living
like,
in their own filth. Yeah.
Yeah, so they'll just like smack you off of like it's kind of cool, but like you're running through the top part of the cathedral on like the like cross beams and stuff, and like the giant, like you're having to duck into like little alcoves because the giants are like slamming their hands down trying to kill you. And eventually you work your way down to the bottom of the cathedral where you can finally kill the giants. I don't think they respawn, so
they
like,
don't know.
If you do manage to kill them, it's kind of nice.
And they're easy to kill when you're hitting their ankles. They're
Yeah.
super easy. They can't really hit you. You're slow walking because you're in their poop. But yeah.
A lot less of that than you would expect, too. Yeah.
We don't think about that too hard. Thematically, the whole thing with the Deacons of the Deep and like the Cathedral of the Deep and all that, really cool.
Yeah.
But the level is just really kind of, is not my favorite.
Yeah.
You encounter some mimics here, at least one, which kind of sets off you basically hit every chest in this game at least once until you learn how to recognize them, because Dark Souls 3 went mimic crazy.
Yeah,
Like,
there were a
ton of mimics in this game.
Like one of the first chests you find in like the first level, like on Lothric.
Oh yeah, there is one there.
There is one in there, and it's like one of the first chests you find. I think it's in a room with two chests, so that the first chest you find is not it, and then the second chest you find kills you.
Beautiful.
So
you navigate around. This is where you meet Patches, and he does his thing.
Yeah, shocking. If you've ever played one of these games, Patches is not to be trusted.
Yeah, he's dressed up as the Onion Knight, which is kind of a new twist. But yeah, you go through, you can kill the giants, which makes things easier. You can, again, everything loops back to that main bonfire, which is pretty cool. This bonfire is also how you access the first DLC.
Yep.
That's where Gale is like praying and wants you to touch his scrap of painting.
Yep.
So then you end up, like you were saying, fighting a really gimmicky boss.
Yeah.
That is just a bunch of dudes that slowly walk towards you and can cast things at you.
There's like certain ones that you need to kill.
Yeah, it's like there will be one glowing.
Yeah.
And that's the one that will take the health bar down. But as long as you just don't stand in the middle of them and just take damage, you can pretty much just like walk up to the group, swing, and knock like 7 of them out, roll away, walk up to the group, swing, knock 7 of them out, and that's the fight. There's a phase 2 where things get a little more intense. There's like some slightly more aggressive ones, but yeah, this boss fight is a common joke in the community.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit of ROM. Like obviously ROM is a whole lot harder.
The spiders are much more of a threat.
The spiders are more of a threat, and ROM itself is much more of a threat. But it's kind of like one of those where it's like you can kind of just run up to ROM and just hit her.
It's the ROM, it's the Deacons, it's Renala phase 1. It's they have their like
a bunch of little dudes that aren't really hard, but also like will gank you if you're just letting them, basically.
Yeah, and if you stand still and catch the big magic attack, you're going to die, kind of thing.
Exactly.
So you kill them, you end up realizing that the boss you came down here to find is not here.
Yeah.
Aldrich has left. But this is where you get the doll that will allow you to go to Irithyll, which... So it's not optional. The zone is not optional, even though it's not necessarily on the path.
Yeah.
You have to come here to progress. So then you can go the other direction that we mentioned from the Road of Sacrifices, which is Farron Keep. And this is your poison swamp.
Yes.
This is the classic, I'm just going to go ahead and let the poison get me.
Yeah.
Because I can't be double poisoned. And you're fat rolling through some of the poison, and this is where the lizards that are in all these FromSoft games that can curse you or make their appearance. The idea in Farron Keep is that you have to go to these individual places and put out fires, and you put out 3 of them, and it unlocks the boss door.
Yeah. And
it's pretty linear. You're not doing a lot of, like, you don't have to explore really to find these. If you follow the path, they will be there.
It signposts pretty well, not in like a big, obviously, like, you know, yellow arrows on the ground pointing you at them, but just like the way that the level is laid out kind of naturally guides you to these 3 things that you need to do.
Especially the first 2. So the first 2 you find very obviously, and then the third one is kind of in like its own section of Farron, and that's where you can again take a little side path and you can find the wolf, which lets you join a covenant. And you can go up and you can fight a demon that was from Dark Souls 1.
Yeah.
That type of demon.
Yes.
So a little bit more nod back to the first game. And if you explore in Farron, you can find some of those mushrooms from Dark Souls 1 just dead in a corner. And so little things like that keep popping up from the first game. And you're like, this is interesting.
Yes. And this is... like at the start of the show, you had read kind of the evolution of trademark online multiplayer. This is, I think, where they kind of start some of that. So in
Road
Dark
of
Souls,
Sacrifices is a pretty hot PvP zone.
Well, PvP, but also like, so in Dark Souls 2, they had several zones. Like there was one zone in Dark Souls 1, and then there were several zones in Dark Souls 2 where like the covenant you joined would just auto summon you into it. And so Farron Keep is one of the ones where you will, like, if you join the Watchdogs of Farron with the wolf and you like have the covenant active, I forget exactly how it works in this game. If you wear a ring or if you just
I think you just activate
the covenant.
You have a sigil or a crest or something. Yeah. It's a separate item.
Yeah. But if you've got it active, then it will summon you into Farron Keep to defend it from other players trying to just make their way through the game that happen to be kindled while they're going through Farron Keep.
Which I got lucky and I was
going to say, the first time when you and I played together and we went through this co-op, we got invaded a bunch in Farron Keep because you were kindled. So
Farron Keep and Road of Sacrifices, both, I remember dealing with PvP a lot. I have a few PvP stories in this game.
Yeah.
It wasn't here, thankfully.
Yes. This is like the first one, but it is not the most popular one.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I texted you at some point and was like,
yes, you did.
PvP sucks in these games.
Yes.
Like, invasions suck. So yeah, you get through, you put out all the fires. There's definitely some stuff you can explore, items you can find. This is another place where you go by like a tree and that giant can shoot arrows and kill some crabs for you. Like, it still is, if you were to zoom out, like part of the world, the areas you've been exploring.
Yeah. And this is a zone I feel like I don't explore a ton. Like,
I explored pretty much everything except I got cursed. There's one little corner with the stupid basilisks.
Yep.
And after I got cursed the first time, I got cursed twice and lost my souls. And then I was like, you know what? Screw it. Whatever's over there, I don't need for my Unga Bunga build. Yeah. I'm just going to keep moving forward.
Yeah. Like, I think I explored it my first time through the game, and every time since I'll look up like what's in this zone, and I'll pick what I want, and I'll just go get those.
There's
things.
definitely like some upgrade materials and soul items. There's a ember shard or whatever Estus shard that's worth getting. But yeah, for the most part, it's like if this is just some sort of like
if this is a
consumable item over in the corner or whatever, I'm not worried about it.
Exactly. So there are 2 bosses in this zone. One is
if you count the stray demon,
they are. So
that's what I was saying. Like if you go from the wolf, if you go up, you end up on like this decrepit bridge fighting some hollows, and then there's a stray demon just kind of up there chilling and doesn't have a health bar. Technically not a boss, like a boss health bar. Has a health bar, obviously, but not like a boss health bar. This stupid demon. I had more trouble with this demon on this playthrough than I have ever had. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But it just consistently was grabbing me and throwing me off. Off the ledge.
Bridge. Yeah.
It's not a hard fight.
No.
It's a demon. It does the like butt bounce. It throws some rocks at you. Like it's not.
Yeah, I was gonna say it is basically just like an upgraded version of the first boss from Dark Souls 1.
Exactly. But it can grab you, and it could grab you from behind it. Like that was the problem, was that the grab was just like guaranteed. I did do some Google searching because I was dying to it so much.
Yeah.
And apparently if you like spam R1 while it's holding you, you can break free.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And so like as soon as I learned that, I killed it and I didn't get grabbed again.
Yeah. One of those things where like especially if you've come from a bunch of other FromSoftware games where like the grab attack is like, well, here I have to watch this animation and maybe not die, hopefully. Yeah. Like why would you ever spam right bumper?
Yeah. So like I can't confirm or deny that.
Yeah.
Because I ended up like once I had that knowledge, I was like, cool, at least now I know how to break free. And then I managed to dodge the grab for the first time in like 17 attempts. It wasn't that bad. I think it took me like 5 tries or something, but it was still. I was like, this is the not even a real boss that's gonna like check me at this point. But yes.
And there's not like a good bonfire at that point either.
It's
like,
down by the wolf.
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't you have to still like climb up the ladder and the elevator to get there?
And then like loop around the bridge and then run down. Yeah, it was not ideal. So yeah, you kill it, sort of a boss, but then the main boss is the Abyss Watchers.
Yes.
And super cool thematically. Their whole deal was that they were like sworn to hunt the abyss.
Yeah.
And so the whole reason that they're here is that Wolnir, who we'll talk about a little bit later, apparently had like fallen to the abyss.
Yeah.
And so like his kingdom had leaned into the abyss's power. And so the Abyss Watchers had come and basically destroyed his kingdom, which is why they're now just catacombs.
Yeah.
And why he was trapped in like this chalice being tormented by the abyss. And then apparently the theory is that they kindled the flame because they are lords. They kindled the flame, and then in the age that passed while they were gone, the abyss had like kind of leaked out. And so when they were resurrected and brought back, they had the abyss on them.
Yeah.
And because they're like sworn to exterminate the abyss, when you walk in, they're killing each other.
Yeah.
But they also like come back to life. And so it's just really cool, like magic-y fantasy stuff that's really fascinating. Like this is the stuff that's like you walk in to a boss fight that is kind of annoying to get to. You have those like Rosaria hunters and stuff you have to get past, but you walk in and you get this probably one of the more famous cinematic like cutscenes from Dark Souls 3 of the Abyss Watchers, one stabbing the other one and then turning its like gaze towards you. And you're like, wow, that was really epic. I have no idea what's happening here. And then you go and you learn why that was happening. It's like, oh, that makes it more epic, you know? But the boss fight, not too difficult.
Yeah.
You can summon again. There's an NPC.
You can summon, and
you're essentially fighting
a group.
Well, it's like a glorified NPC character. It's not like a big monster. It's not anything like that. It's just another guy with a sword. But then there's a as you're fighting in phase 1, I think 2 or 3 more pop up, and so then you're fighting like a group of them.
Yeah.
And then phase 2 is like the main one with a flaming sword.
Yeah. And they will fight each other too a little bit.
Yeah, I can't remember if they hurt each other.
They hurt each other for sure. I don't know if they fight each other too, or if they
I think they're
hurt
mostly
each other.
focused on you.
Yeah.
They can hurt each other. But yeah, especially if you have a summon to just kind of divide attention.
Yeah.
It's not terrible.
Like, still doable solo, but definitely like one of the ones that at this point I'm just like, yep, I'm going to summon here because I don't feel like dealing with the like hassle.
But also just really cool.
Yeah.
And like probably one of the more famous songs from Dark Souls 3. Like, we haven't really put a big focus on the music in these episodes yet. I feel like Dark Souls 1 had some good music. Dark Souls 2 stepped it up, had some, like, the music felt higher quality.
Yeah.
But Dark Souls 3, especially coming off of Bloodborne, like, this was where FromSoftware became famous for their like OSTs and for the boss music.
Yeah.
And then Sekiro and Elden Ring incorporated music in the levels, which I think added a whole nother dimension to the games. But yeah, some of the music, I would say probably this boss is one of the first ones you encounter where the music is, it's like one of those, it's always in like a FromSoft compilation on YouTube kind of thing.
Yeah.
So cool boss. And then the game just falls apart from here. It just goes to complete, utter garbage. No, not.
I was wondering where your like frustration started, because I was like, maybe it started with Fair and Keep, but so the Catacombs is where.
No,
just
honestly, Fair and Keep is kind of annoying.
Yeah,
but I think I like Fair and Keep better than the Cathedral of the Deep.
Yeah,
I don't like that level really at all.
Yeah, so it's like Cathedral, Catacombs, and Smoldering Lake are just.
But I really don't mind the Catacombs either.
Okay,
like, the Catacombs aren't bad. They do the thing where you have to kill skeletons twice.
Yep.
But other than that, like, I didn't really mind the Catacombs too much.
And they're not too long.
No,
it was a surprisingly short level, because there have been Catacombs in like the other Dark Souls games, and I always like they're samey enough that I always forget like which Catacombs are from which game. And so like there are things that I expect every time I play through some of the Catacombs, and I'm like, I guess that happened in a different game because it didn't happen in this one.
Yeah, the Catacombs in 3 I really didn't mind. There's a couple of the like rolling ball trap things, but they're not that bad.
Yeah, there's like one spot where you get like invaded by like an NPC that's a little annoying because he kind of jumps you in like a ganky area. I think he jumps you where there's like 2 or 3 other like enemies that are already kind of annoying on their own. It's one of the areas where like the ball rolls and breaks.
Okay.
And then like you go up on a ledge and he's like up there. But there are like 3 other enemies up there.
What the Catacombs in Dark Souls 3 remind me of is the Catacombs in Elden Ring.
Yeah.
Like those kind of underground exploring the tomb kind of levels.
Yeah.
Not bad. And then the boss is super easy gimmick fight. It's
like a very cool aesthetic fight.
And thematically, like super cool, super depressing when you know the lore. Like he's trying to escape the darkness, but he can't get away from it. And his only thing that has kept him going this whole time is he has glowing gauntlets and like a glowing sword, and you go in and shatter the glowing gauntlets, and so the darkness overtakes him, and so he's done.
Yep.
Then the next zone is where things, and it's an optional zone, you don't have to go here.
Yeah.
But the Smoldering Lake is probably the worst zone in Dark Souls 3.
Yeah, it is my least favorite zone, I would say, out of like looking at these other ones. Yeah. Smoldering Lake is not my favorite.
Now you want to talk about cool fan service from Dark Souls 1. This is where Quelaag or her sister, whoever, is like dead underground. This is where a ton of Taurus demons and whatever, you can find them dead underground. Like there's a lot of cool lore. This is just where you're going to be just abused every step of the way. Yeah.
Like you walk out on the Smoldering Lake and there's like a giant
ballista.
worm
Oh yeah.
That attacks you, and also there are a bunch of giants with ballista shooting down, like sniping down at you.
It's one giant tower
Yeah.
ballista that you end up circling around and turning off eventually. But
yeah, because you pretty much like have to just bum rush like a hole in the ground and then fight your way through some more like graves, which that whole area is kind of annoying because there are a bunch of the little cursed frogs.
It's terrible. There's the basilisks, there's the statues from Dark Souls 1 that like shoot fire. Like it's very much a condensed Dark Souls 1 experience underground. In this playthrough, what Cowboy did, what he recommended is charging past the worm, catching that bonfire on the backside, and he just straight up fought the boss then and there and beat the boss.
I thought you couldn't get into the boss at that
point.
No,
you can. You can just fight the boss.
I've just learned apparently that I've wasted my time every single time by like thinking that there was something I had to unlock.
No.
Up on like the cliffs to get to access that boss, and apparently that's not true.
No, and then he was like, and now we're going to explore this area coming in from the back. And this is where I got my sword, the Fume Ultra Great Sword.
Yep.
You fight the NPC that wields it, and
he's like down by some lava.
Yeah, it has been nerfed. When the walkthrough I was following, when he was using the sword at like the game launched midway through his walkthrough videos, that sword was busted.
Yep.
They nerfed it. It's still good. So I went through, I got that sword. There's one particular hallway with those like flame summoning bird things or whatever that's just absolutely
garbage.
It's broken. Like the zone is trash. There's no redeeming quality to this zone whatsoever.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, if you didn't get another Estus and 2 upgrades to give it more, to make your Estus give you more health, this zone would not be worth going into at all unless you just needed something from it.
Exactly.
And even to this day, this is another one of the zones in this game where I do just kind of like run through. I find like where those 3 items are, and then I look at like, do I need anything else from this zone? No? Okay. I'm just going to get through here.
Yes. The boss isn't terrible. You fight another demon. It's the old Demon King. He remember
has some like big fire attacks that can be rough, but there's ways to like get around all of them.
There's also a summon that you can pull in, but it's really just his fire AoEs. If you're not paying attention to those, can really hurt you. But if you're staying on your toes and paying attention, he's not too bad. I remember struggling with him quite a bit my first playthrough, but I also, for whatever reason, was like scared to use Ember my first playthrough because I didn't want to run out, whatever. Right. This playthrough, I was popping Ember anytime I died and maintaining that health boost and stuff like that. So
because the game is very generous, like,
and you can buy quite a bit of it from the vendor at Firelink. So
and like worst case scenario, you can just, I think if you get summoned and you go help someone beat a boss, you get embered. And so especially if you've played through the game and are just going back through it, like it's definitely the most active of the games, I would say. So like there's usually people who are summoning in front of a boss, and like you've played the game, so you can do better at not dying.
So you fight your way through this absolute trash zone, and then you come to a zone that is peak FromSoft in design, aesthetic, vibes, but also peak FromSoft in difficulty.
Yeah. This is, up until this point, the game seems like it's kind of scaling with you. Like it's getting more difficult as you go, but it's definitely like not outpacing you or throwing anything just like crazy at you. And then you get to Irithyll of the Boreal Valley, and it's just like,
this is where Dark Souls begins.
Yeah, it's like, I hope you got good, because if you didn't, you were going to struggle in this zone.
You walk through the gate and you're immediately, it just appears behind you, this like alligator, wolf, demon monster.
This Bloodborne looking thing.
Yes. And you fight it, It's aggressive. It kills you once. You respawn. You kill it. It's not that bad. You immediately get your bonfire. And then you are in Bloodborne. But it's more like spiritual Bloodborne. There's a lot of ghosts and stuff. But it's very like dark castle, gothic. And it's really, really cool aesthetically. But this time around, following the walkthrough, like I had been leveling adequately. I had been allocating stats like I was supposed to. I had been like leveling up. I think I was using my great club at this point. And that was something I wanted to touch on because I was looking at like what the best strength weapons were. And somebody was like, use the great club. It's super easy to get early on. It scales with strength really well. It does a ton of damage. And I was like, great, I'm going to do that. So I got the club. I went in. I leveled up this club as much as I could at the time. Went to bed. Woke up the next day. Looked in my inventory. Realized I leveled up.
Club.
Yeah, the wrong club.
Not great club.
And was like, ugh. And that was something I put in my notes was just like Elden Ring smoothed out so much of the like grind with leveling, changing gear, changing the weapon you want to use. Like if you need upgrade materials, go run some mines. They're all right there. You know you're going to get them. Because what I ended up doing was spawning in Fair and Keep, where the boss was, walking out, letting the Rosaria Hunter things kill the mobs, then killing them, and doing that probably like 7 or 8 times to get souls. And they would drop some of the, what are they called in that game? Shards. The leveling material. Or the upgrade material for weapons. Because at this point, I didn't have what I needed for the vendor to sell them. Or no, I think I did, which is why I was trying to get souls.
Yeah.
And so it was like, I either had to grind for souls or grind for materials. And it's just, it wasn't fun. Like, it's not fun in any of the games, probably up till Elden Ring, if you screw up like that. And if you screw up with your build, like any of that kind of stuff, Elden Ring has like evened out so much of that experience.
Yes. Yeah. Because even like Dark Souls 3, like, eventually you get the ability to pretty much purchase most of the upgrade materials, but again, like the cost of them makes it so that it's almost not worth it to like it, you're gonna have to grind and it's gonna just kind of be a little bit of frustration versus like Elden Ring, where it's like, yeah, technically like the stuff does cost souls in that game, but it's so much easier to grind. And most of the time, like if I want to upgrade a weapon, I can just go to the keep and buy the stuff. And
and if not, you probably they give you so much more of those materials.
Yeah.
And if I need them, I need to just go find a mine. I need to go run whatever mine is in this zone. And I'm either A, going to get the materials I need, or B, I'm going to get the bell bearing that will let me buy them.
Exactly.
And in Elden Ring, I feel like there's so many more soul currency items that you get.
Yeah.
And there's so like the price of those items is so significantly lower than where you usually are level wise that it's like, well, let me pop a few of these and I can do it. Like I'm not sacrificing levels to buy these.
Exactly.
Whereas in Dark Souls 3, it did feel kind of like I was sacrificing levels to level this club. But anyways, I got the club leveled pretty much, like maxed out what it could be for that point. And so I was doing work going through Irithyll, and I actually had a pretty good time exploring it.
Because like the opening street of Irithyll is rough, but once you get past sort of that opening street, it evens out a whole lot. I think.
Yeah, it's not as bad. They have some invisible enemies, but they're weak.
Yeah.
And then they have like these caster guys that can torch you that are kind of annoying. But yeah, I like the zone. I think it's a cool zone.
Yeah.
So you explore, you can find the pathway to the Irithyll dungeon.
Yes.
But I didn't go there yet. I did find that pathway. You end up exploring. There's some NPC character stuff you can do here. But this was, I got invaded here. This is an invasion place. The invader It was a Saturday afternoon, and Joe was actually here watching me play, and the invaders showed up. And I was like, oh my God, here we go again. Another invader. And he came in, and I was like near the bonfire where Henri is. And so he came in there, and I realized this guy was not your typical like gank master. He was just a guy trying out invasions or something. And I kind of felt bad because I was way better than he was. And so that was kind of satisfying. It was like the one satisfying invasion I had in this game. But ultimately, you go through and you fight
Pontiff Sullivan,
the Bloodborne. I mean, he reminds me of Ligarius, from Bloodborne, but he's also like, he's different enough. They know this boss is tough, because they give you 2 summons outside the boss gate, and I took both of them in. I beat him first try. I probably would not have beat him first try if I did not have those summons, because he is aggressive, and then he clones himself. He's got 2 swords. Like, he's a really cool design.
Yeah, he really is.
And a really instrumental character in the lore of this game, apparently, which is cool. Definitely go check that out. But yeah, cool boss fight. I like this one a lot.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the more iconic Dark Souls 3 bosses.
Yeah. Very good musical theme.
Yes.
As well.
So after Pontiff Sylvain.
Yes. So you have the option to go Irithyll Dungeon, but right behind Pontiff Sullivan opens up to Anor Londo.
It opens up to just some random castle-y rooftops and BS.
Yes.
And
a theme in FromSoftware games.
You don't know that you're heading to Anor Londo.
It doesn't pop up like right as you come out there?
It doesn't pop up till you like go up the staircase and you're like, this is looking really familiar. And then you see like, boom, Anor Londo. You are getting shot by knights off of like the rooftops. But me, I'm rocking my massive greatsword at this point. I'm pretty beefed up. Like most of my stats are in like stamina, health, vitality, which like lets you carry more weight. And strength. So like if I can get to these knights, I can stun lock them. Like I'm having a pretty good time exploring. It's going pretty well. What do you think happens?
Well, because I know that this is one of the other zones that is a PvP Covenant invasion zone, I know exactly what happened. You got invaded constantly.
This is when I texted you.
Yeah.
So I have 2 invasion stories here. I think the first one was, so you can run past these giants and a couple like NPC characters that can fight you, and you can hit a invisible wall and you can go down, and there are 2 of those alligator wolf monsters. And a covenant, and this is where you get like one of the most amazing rings in the game. So I went down there and I'm fighting these 2 wolf things. I think it took me 2 or 3 attempts. They don't respawn, so if you can kill one, then at least the next time you go back down there, it's just one you have to fight.
Yes.
But I went down there, I fought these 2 things, I'm burning Estus, whatever. Before I have a chance to rest at this bonfire, like I lit it, so it was active at least. So if I died, which is what happened. So I go down there, I light the bonfire, I talk to the NPC to like get access to the Covenant. Oh, I get invaded.
Yep. By the spears of the church.
So.
Not the spears. The Aldrich Faithful? Is that what it is? I don't know.
Probably that one, because that's Deacon McDonald that's down there. So this is where I experimented to see, are there any ways to get out of this?
Yeah.
And other than like force quitting your game, which I don't know what that would do, there's no way to get out. You can't exit the game. You can't rest. You can't do anything. So I just sat there. I literally sat in that room where the wolves are for probably 5 minutes, 7 minutes. I was like, I'm not going up there. I'm not doing anything. If this guy really cares, he'll find me.
Yep.
And he did.
Yep.
Here he comes like sliding down the ladder. Because down there's no enemies or anybody else that he can bring into the fight. It was just me and him.
Yeah.
And I ended up killing him.
Nice.
It was a tough fight. It was very satisfying. But when I was just exploring the level and trying to progress, actually what happened was I had cleared pretty much everything, except I hadn't gone into the like spot that would basically take you to Anne Orlando and like the next part of the level. I had cleared pretty much everything out. I just got an elevator and I don't remember what I was doing. Maybe I just got an elevator and I was about to go back up and I got invaded. And I got invaded by like Spazzy Dagger McGee, who was like, his whole thing was that he would stand facing away from me.
Yeah.
And he would have like the spell that has like the floating daggers above your head, like the swords. And there was something about like the way he backstepped or jumped or like dodged, and it like he had a combo that he was trying to pull off consistently. And I kited this dude around the entire zone until finally I was like, screw this. And I went down to like the Pontiff Sylvain bonfire and I fought him down there and eventually he beat me. And I have not, like, that's one of those things where I wanted to like look up his gamer tag and find out who he was and put a curse on him. Like I was so tilted. Yeah. And that was when I texted you and was like, invasions in Dark Souls are the stupidest things.
Yep.
Because now I'm dead. I have to spend an ember if I want to get all my health back. Thankfully I was smart and I went back to a bonfire, so my souls were just right there. But now all those stupid nights that I've cleared and everything that I had done in that level was reset, and not because of me or anything I did, but because this guy decided he was going to invade my world and just like try out his super gimmicky optimized face away from your opponent and step away. Yep. And it would be one thing if FromSoft like actually had good netcode.
Yeah.
Because even in Elden Ring, it's so janky when you can like swing and clearly see your sword go through the opponent and they don't get hit. Or you can swing and look like you're like 3 feet away and then watch them like stagger and get hit. And it's like, sometimes it works in your favor and it's like, whatever, that's fine. But it would feel a lot better if it was spot on.
Right.
And like you knew that it was a fair fight.
Yeah.
Because there's so many times where I'm swinging like the heaviest sword in the world and feel like I should have pancaked this dude, but he apparently dodged.
Yeah. Well, because, I think it's made worse by the build you were playing, because the build you were playing is a lot slower, does a ton of damage, but a lot slower. And so, if you're running like a very spazzy dexterity build and you're, doing 5 or 6 attacks, even if just a couple of them hit, like you're still doing damage versus like you make one giant swing that would chunk pretty much 75% of his health. But because of the sort of lag and, whatever, it's like, nope, didn't get him. And also like you made one attack, left yourself open, and like,
exactly. You got parried somehow. Yeah. It
and was, like, I know that like FromSoft purists and PvP connoisseurs will be that like, well, just don't be embered. We'll have Way of the Blue Covenant on so that it summons people to help protect you, blah, 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 blah. Like, yeah, but also like, it's just not fun.
Yeah.
If there was a way to opt out of it, which I know too, like you can technically take your console offline and just go through these zones, and then you'll get, I think there are some like NPC invades, but like they're NPC invades.
I did. I went offline for a good chunk after that because I was very upset by that invader.
Yeah.
I should have looked into the covenants a little bit more and maybe been like, let me see maybe I get another busted build to come help me. But
or like Watchdogs of, no, I think if you're Way of the Blue, it summons both Watchdogs of Farron and Blue Sentinels, or Blades of Dark Moon and Blue Sentinels, to come defend you if you get invaded.
But ultimately, like what the problem was it felt like a waste of my time.
Yeah.
Because like the time where I just sat in that room waiting for that guy to show up.
Yeah.
Like I'm not playing the game. I'm not progressing. I'm not having fun. I'm not doing anything. I'm just literally sitting here waiting because I want this to be either the least amount of loss possible for me or give me the most like favorable odds to win.
Yeah. And I think it's tough, especially in that particular zone, because that zone is pretty vertical as well. where like it just kind of spawns the person in, and it doesn't, there's, if I'm remembering correctly, there's not a great indication of like, where is this person, you know? It's not like that your enemy is, it's not like the person whose world you invaded is marked on your screen, or you can see them through walls, or there's like a map that you can look at that has them, you know, like you kind of just get into the world and have to figure out where they are. And like, you know, sure, that helps some, or that works in your favor sometimes, because like eventually they'll just, if they're still trying to clear the level, they'll wander to you. But a lot of people, I would imagine, do it like you do it, where it's just kind of like, I'm going back to a place that I've already cleared because I don't want this guy ambushing me, you know, where there are 5 other enemies that I'm trying to like clear out, you know, like I'm going to go to this place, hopefully close to a bonfire, so that if I do die, it's, you know, I can run back and get my souls real quick.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it is one of the,
it's a cool idea.
Yeah. Like, and it's also, I think, way more exasperated now, because
it's like if you were to go back and play Call of Duty from like 3 games ago online, it's like the only people still playing are the ones that are really good or cheating.
Yeah.
And it's same thing. It's like if people that have not moved on to Elden Ring that are invading.
Exactly.
You're dealing with like the cream of the crop or whatever. So it was like, just
yeah, because that was like, I think we talked a little bit about it when we talked about Dark Souls 2, but, and you know, here again, where it's like when I played at launch and I went through these zones, it was like, yeah, I was getting invaded a ton because it was like everyone was playing the game.
Yeah.
But also the caliber of people that you were being invaded by, you like a lower common denominator.
Exactly.
You know, like it's just somebody who happened to find that covenant and who doesn't have an optimized PvP build. Like the people you run into now, if you play this game, it's like they are soul level 125 and every point has been placed exactly where they want it to be placed. And they have the precise build because that is, like they are going into it to kill other people and ruin their day.
If you're intentionally facing away from your opponent to like pull off some wonky combo, like this is what you do. But I mean, to be fair, I have had instances like the one where I waited for the guy and I won, and like I'm still actively playing Dark Souls 3. I'm in the DLC right now, and you saw me get invaded the other night, and I ended up like stun locking that guy, and he had no choice or no chance. But again, it just feels like the game is hard enough already, and it feels just like such a extra layer of either just BS or just wasting my time. A lot of times I'm like, I'm hoping to make some progress tonight when I play this game. Oh, nope, I'm going to get invaded and just sit in this hole for 7 minutes while I wait for him to show up.
Yep.
But all that aside, after this, you get to the like, we are very obviously like we're very obviously reimagining and retreading like the ground from Dark Souls 1, because this is literally Anor Londo.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, you fight your way through Anor Londo, but it's like a lot of it's places that you didn't go in Dark Souls 1, and then you finally get to the boss room, and it is the boss room from Anor Londo from Dark Souls 1.
Well, yes. So what happens is you go through Irithyll, which is apparently like below Anor Londo, and you never saw it in Dark Souls 1, you know, just retroactively. But you leave, you get past where I was getting ganked by PvP people, and you go up like an elevator or whatever, and you pop out, and you get a bunch of signs on the ground saying, looks familiar or whatever. And you realize like it's the spiral staircase. And when you spin it and you go up, you're in that exact stairway that leads into that like main entrance to Anor Londo, where yes, you would have eventually gone through and fought Ornstein and Smough.
Yep.
There's way less like in Dark Souls 1, you have to like veer off to the right, and that's where you're getting shot by the archers. And you go around and do all that. That's all kind of blocked off here. But it's the same like entranceway. It's that same hall. it's the blacksmith is dead in the corner, and it's like really sad, and everything is dark and kind of decrepit, and there's like slimes, and instead of, well, before we get to the boss, like I thought, especially having just come off of Dark Souls 1, I thought this was really cool. Like, it's a really cool section of this game.
Exactly. Yeah. Playing through this game for the first time, I was like, oh, that's a, like you brought up episode 7 of Star Wars earlier. And like, regardless of how you feel about that movie in hindsight, the first time you watched it, there were definite moments where you were just like, it's really cool to see the Millennium Falcon again.
Yes.
Like, and this was one of those moments where like, I don't care how people feel about it in hindsight. Like playing through it the first time, it was very much like, this is the thing from this movie or from the first game. And it's super, gives you little chills seeing it again. So
yeah, it was really well done. I thought it was like very kind of tastefully done. It's not one, like it's 1-to-1, but it's not exactly this. It's not like you walk in and the blacksmith is like, oh, good to see you again, and he just looks older. It's like, no, this is like something has happened here. This is all wrong. It's the same place, but it's all wrong. And yeah, it's and they also did it where it's like, it's just a slice. Yeah. It's a slice of Anor Londo. You get to see some of the key points, but you're not having to retread everything 1-to-1.
Yeah, like it does not overstay its welcome at all.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was really cool. Instead of Ornstein and Smough, you fight Aldrich,
who looks like
he has Gwendolyn as like his head. Essentially, Aldrich is the entire arena because he's just this big blob of goo. He was a deacon that decided to become a cannibal, ate human flesh until he bloated up and just like turned into goo. And so then he decided he would start eating gods. And so that's kind of like,
is he not a big snake at some point? Or a big centipede thing? Am I thinking of a different thing?
No, he like in the boss fight, he like looks kind of like a snake centipede with like Gwendolyn on his head, like as his head. But in the cutscene at the start of the game and stuff, he's just kind of like oozing out of his crypt. Okay. And so like the whole boss arena is like this black ooze that he just like disappears into and pops back up. And so apparently he ate Gwendolyn and like that's how he has his abilities. Yeah. But he also like dreamt about Gwendolyn's sister, who is the like half breed.
Yeah. Oh, Priscilla?
Well, not Priscilla, but the half breed that you like walk across the invisible bridge to get to.
Oh, yes. I just looked at her. She is the leader of the Dark Moon Blades of the Dark Moon.
Yeah, because Gwendolyn got sick or whatever.
Captain Yorshka.
Yeah, so he like dreamt about her and was able to learn her moves, and that's why he has like that magic. And then apparently also has some of the magic from like Nito. So there were theories that he ate Nito.
Yeah.
But also there are theories that like he just dreamt about Nito and didn't actually eat him. So whatever.
Yeah.
He is a pretty tough boss because he has some one-shot moves.
Yeah.
And he kind of spazzes all over the place. But you end up beating him, going up the little side elevator, and the amazing chest is gone.
Sad day.
Yeah. So Guinevere has left. She is no longer in Anor Londo, and that is pretty much where that level ends. And it's like, guess I'm done. Oh, no, wait. Yep. I found another path earlier that leads to the second worst area.
Yeah, I was going to say
the entire game.
These next two areas are some of my least favorite personally.
I don't mind.
I don't mind Cathedral of the Deep. I feel like this is my Cathedral of the Deep. I hate
Irithyll Dungeon sucks.
Yeah.
Irithyll Dungeon, and it's primarily because it's just kind of creepy and gross and annoying, and
I don't mind that part. That's fine by me.
There's just like lots of like screaming and it's just like it's that kind of tense whatever. There are jailer enemies.
Yes, that's the part I hate.
That just take your health away. They just shrink your health bar. It won't kill you.
Yeah.
Can't kill you. It won't go to complete zero. But when it grows back, you're not getting the health back.
Exactly.
You got to heal up. So,
and it doesn't make it clear that that's what's happening when you play. Like,
you have to know.
Yeah, like you just notice your health bar suddenly shrinking, and you're like, "What's going on here? I don't understand this." And then like, because you're getting ganked by like 5 or 6 guys at this point, and one of them has like a little heated prod brand thing, and so those are the enemies that are shrinking your health bar and the problem. But like, it doesn't take long for you to kind of put 2 and 2 together that that's what's going on, and so like, okay, let me target these people. But it doesn't tell you that. It doesn't make it clear that that's what's happening. There's not like a magical effect around them. They just run at you with a glowing
they can stun lock the crap out of you if they hit you with that prod.
Yep.
And so, yeah, you're basically dead if you let them touch you. And so on top of the health shrinking, it's just a weird labyrinth of like locked doors and gates and keys. And this is also where the like access to the Archdragon Peak is, where you have to like do the one emote to get there.
That's the one that I'm like, I don't understand how anyone ever figured this out without like looking in the game files. Because so you're wandering through Irithyll Dungeon. You come out on this like outside place, and it's just like there's a dude just sitting there, like a statue or something, just sitting there staring off over the cliff into the sunset or whatever. And to get to an optional zone, you have to sit down and do a specific emote for like 5 seconds or 10 seconds or something next to him. And then you will be teleported there. And I'm just like, how did anyone ever, like, because now obviously there's a bunch of like messages giving you the idea like something should happen here. But at the time, I'm just kind of like, who?
I can't remember if when you find that emote or the item or whatever after you kill whatever his name is, Osiris.
Yeah.
Orseos. I don't know if there's anything in there that like indicates, oh, hey, do this thing in somewhere. Maybe something will happen. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, this whole area, then like at the bottom of the dungeon is just a room full of jailers. And then there's also a mimic down there. And there's all these weird, like, creepy, crawly, bloodborne, like, baby bug things on the walls. Yep. And just like, this whole zone is just gross.
Yeah.
And I don't like it.
There isn't a boss here, though.
No, it's like a transitional area between the top world and the profane capital, which I don't really mind the profane capital. It's pretty small.
Yeah, I was going to say, when I first got there, I was kind of dreading it, and then it was very short, and I was like, oh, okay. And it's kind of like gimmicky.
Yeah, there is a path. There's a side, basically, like, you can just go to the boss.
Yeah.
Or you can explore a little bit and fight, like, some gross monsters, fight these disgusting giant hand baby pig things, fight some mimics, of course, and then, you get some items and whatever. But yeah, essentially, other than like fighting some gargoyles and a few enemies here and there, like you can just run to Yorm, who is the boss of that area, and his lore is also super interesting. I didn't do the quest because I lost track of Sigurd.
Yeah.
But like the Sigurd Yorm stuff that happens is really cool. Yorm is a gimmick fight. He's the classic pickup weapon that does super damage. They had one in Demon Souls. They have one in Elden Ring.
Yeah. This is essentially the, what's his name in Elden Ring? Rykard.
Right. Yeah. So you pick up the sword. It does super damage. The problem is you have to pick it up in the fight and navigate your inventory to equip it, which is kind of crazy if you haven't been like putting stuff in storage and you just have like 57 weapons at this point.
And if you don't know that is what you're supposed to do.
No, yeah, for sure. It's common knowledge in quotes at this point, but yeah, I'm sure that initially, and like if you knew to like follow Sigurd's quest, he has that sword. And so then he could be doing super damage even if you weren't. But yeah, cool fight, cool boss, cool lore, definitely worth looking into.
Yeah, this is one of the zones that I remembered the least about just because of how quick I go through it.
There's not much there. Yeah. Even if you explore everything, the side stuff's not that, like, there's not much. So then, after the profane capital, you get a cutscene that kind of shows you something's going on back where the lady who gave you the banner is. And so you go up there and you talk to her, and if you're smart, you leveled up and you don't have a bunch of souls. And you go back to her and you get the honor of fighting the dancer, who is the other kind of like elite warrior for Pontiff Sylvain, blocking your other path of progression from this point. It was what I was talking about earlier of like, either way you go from this kind of courtyard, the Pontiff has planted guards to prevent you from progressing. And so the dancer is a really cool boss
it's a
aesthetically
cool
and cool lore wise. She's definitely a skill check.
Yeah. Like you can, I think, technically fight her like right out the gate. I think you have to kill the lady who gives you the banner.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know how early on or what the trigger is. It might be killing
I think
lady.
If you kill the lady, the dancer spawns. But also, like,
why
you're
would
not
you
going
do
to...
that?
Yeah. It's
like,
at that point in the game, I'm sure there's somebody who has done it first thing with a broken straight sword, but I am not that person.
It's like, even if you kill the dancer, then you're just in like the end game zone of the game, and you don't have the other Lords of Cinder to beat the game anyways. So like, why would you do that? But yeah, so you fight her. She's really cool. She's got two swords similar to the Pontiff. One's fire, one's like magic. She kind of dances around, which is her thing. After you defeat her,
you get her swords when you kill her.
Yes. You can, similar to Elden Ring, if you played that, you can turn in the boss souls for weapons. And you can get hers. You can get the
weapon art is sort of like the dancing around.
They did weapon arts in 3. They were nowhere near as kind of fleshed out as in Elden Ring. And they were like...
It was definitely like a prototype-y thing.
Yeah, nowhere near as like utilized by people playing the game as they were in Elden Ring, but that idea was first in Dark Souls 3, which I forget about until I play that game. But this takes you to Lothric Castle, which this was kind of where the game picked back up for me, where I was like, yes, Dark Souls again. To be fair, Lothric Castle is rough. It's a tough zone with tough enemies and dragons, and it's like, hey, you remember that beginning area with like hollows and dragons? This is that, but on crack. It's not massive.
It's smaller than I expect, and I feel like I've spent so much more time here.
It's because every turn you make is like a fight for your life. Like it is a battle of attrition to get through Lothric Castle. There's like an entire Bloodborne-y room of darkness and just like things chasing you and screaming and throwing fireballs at you and stuff. And eventually you navigate through all the traps. You end up dispatching the dragons, and then you can kind of pick up all the loot.
This is an end zone farm as well, like, or an end of game farm. As like, if you need souls, this is the best place to do it. So and then you get to the boss, Dragon Slayer Armor. I just had to look him up because I was like, I don't remember that. And now that I've seen the picture, I'm like, oh, that guy. But kind of a weird one. Like, I feel like this boss is forgettable, at least for me.
Well, it's essentially like Ornstein. But it's being controlled by like the butterfly thing in the sky. Which
the skybox is very cool in this zone.
Yes. Very Bloodborne.
The sun is like dark signed, so it's like got a ring of like black around it and looks like it's like bleeding or leaking or something, and there are a bunch of the like moonlight butterflies kind of flying all around.
The butterfly thing, like the lore, like we still don't really know exactly what is going on with all of them, but there is one controlling this Dragon Slayer armor, and you fight it, and it's kind of like a big Ornstein with a shield, and you can summon again, And it's like a very aggressive boss that you just kind of have to be on your toes and trade blow for blow, also be aggressive, unless like you're playing a caster or whatever. But yeah, it's not like when I think Dark Souls 3, this is not one of the bosses that like pops in my head.
Yeah. This is he's not a bad boss, but it's definitely one that I don't feel like I spent a bunch of attempts on. So I don't remember it because it was particularly challenging, and I don't remember it because it was particularly cool. So,
and then from there you have 2 optional zones.
Yes.
And I think I did them in the opposite order of the like IGN guide, but the first one they have listed is the Consume King's Garden, which again,
you can go left or right, basically.
Yeah. It's a small zone.
Yeah.
With, some tough enemies. Like there's a lot of those like dark, like I don't remember what that stuff is called, the corrupted hollows or whatever that have like the black things spewing out of them that are like tough to fight.
Yeah, I ran through this zone with the Dancer's Blades, one of which is fire. And so if you hit any of those things with fire, they like stop attacking you and are just like, I'm on fire.
Yeah, so, I ran through with some fire bombs.
That works too.
And also just a big sword.
Yeah.
There's a couple knights, but like it's basically like one big area that you kind of clear out, and then you can head to the boss, which is
very weird. This is a very weird boss fight.
It's a very weird. There's some definite lore stuff going on here. It's this like naked dragon that thinks it's holding a baby.
And maybe is holding a baby?
And the baby's either invisible or the dragon's gone mad.
Yeah, it's like a Murgo situation.
Yeah, and so either way, it's kind of like the derpy Dark Souls dragon versus the like cool Dark Souls dragon.
Yeah, it screamed like Seethe, the scaleless.
Exactly.
And not like, badass. So.
Not like the dragon that is notorious for being one of the toughest bosses in the game that's in the DLC.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or one of the toughest bosses in all of FromSoft's catalog.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this fight, not too difficult. It can do the like spiky thing that Seethe could do and curse you. But other than that, it's got pretty telegraphed moves.
Yeah. It's in like a smallish room, which I feel like makes it a little bit more difficult. But yeah, it's like a 2-shot boss.
It is one of those bosses that is talking to you during the fight and like spouting lore and stuff, which is pretty uncommon up to this point. So that was kind of interesting, especially since like Elden Ring does that a lot.
Yep. It's Melania, Blade of Mikola.
So after you kill the dragon that's holding an invisible baby,
yes,
you can go to, or you could have gone here first, which I think I did. If you hit, or maybe not, maybe you have to go here first because isn't it a invisible wall from after his boss room that takes you to the untended graves? I think so. I think you go through his boss room, which is where you get the...
Yeah, you have to defeat him.
Yeah, you get the emote we were talking about earlier for the other optional zone. And then you hit an invisible wall and you drop down and you do the thing that FromSoft likes to do that always still gets me.
Yeah.
But you like see your hub in the world, or in this case, you see it like apparently thousands of years in the past or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you go through, it's dark, you fight some tough enemies, and you end up you fight Gundyr again, but he's way tougher this time. He's champion Gundyr now. He again has some cool Prepare to Cry lore about him. And then you end up in Firelink Shrine again, and this is where you can find some eyes to give your Firekeeper, because she's been blindfolded this whole time.
Yeah.
And that will determine your ending options.
Yeah.
She will unlock a new ending for you if you give her eyes. And the only thing in this Firelink Shrine, aside from like some items and stuff, is your like merchant lady. She's chilling there, and she's apparently, it's the same lady.
It's the same lady.
So yeah, just all that kind of like time looping, generational, timey-wimey stuff in play here. But it was kind of cool. I know there are some people who see this as a negative, as like reused assets, reused zone, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But I think it's cool. It's also like just a small slice of the whole game. It's not like they didn't lean on this particular type of thing
anywhere
else. So
And it was a cool little, like it didn't overstay its welcome. Like you could be in and out of this zone 15 minutes if you have no trouble with the Gundyr fight, which is a little bit different than like the first time you fight him, but like
he's very
basic thing.
Yeah, he's very aggressive. I have a clip that maybe I'll post of my fight with him because I actually was pretty successful and had a really good like fight. I was pretty good at dodging. I just had the timing right, which was nice. But this is also where you can like get his weapon and stuff like that, which is cool. From there, you can either go to the next kind of actual progression zone, or you can go to that optional zone we talked about, which is the Archdragon Peak. So if you do what you were talking about and you go back there and you sit down, you emote, and you wait 5 seconds, you get carried off to, again, not a super big zone. It's bigger than the ones we were just talking about for sure. Like there are a couple bonfires, there's some exploration, there's definitely some traps and some things to navigate, and there's a gimmick fight.
Yeah. I think this is a cool gimmick fight. I like this gimmick fight.
FromSoft has gotten better at their gimmick fights, and this one is one of the better ones. Essentially, it's a dragon.
Yeah.
That is
like blowing, like it spawns behind you?
No, it spawns in front of you and you can run past it.
Yeah. But like if you try to fight it head on, it's going to be rough. I think technically you can.
I think you can, yeah.
But like the way that you're supposed to do it is you're supposed to kind of like run up a bunch of stairs while it's still kind of attacking you the whole time, and there are a bunch of like enemies. And eventually you come out above it and you can like do a plunging attack onto it and kill it in one shot.
And the thing that makes it tough is once you kill it, you teleport out.
Yeah.
So there are all of these items and things in this area that you can pick up, but you kind of have to do it during the fight. It's kind of like Mikolash, except better, because Mikolash sucks. It's a terrible fight. But yeah, you're kind of running around, sort of exploring, but trying not to get roasted.
Yeah.
Trying not to get killed by the mobs. The dragon can kill the enemies, which helps you. Cool idea. When I did it, I also clipped this out, but like I did my plunging attack and I stabbed like 10 feet away from the dragon.
Yeah.
And so it kind of took away from the like dramatic effect, but yeah, I like the idea of this. And then it teleports you into like the next section of the Archdragon Peak, which is where you can find Havel.
Yep. Who is locked in a basement in game 1.
And there's like some side quest stuff you can do here.
Yeah.
And you fight a lot of kind of like the snake people in Bloodborne with the cloaks on them, or they weren't really snakes in Bloodborne, but like the cloaked things.
Like the Sen's Fortress guys.
That's kind of what they are here.
Yeah.
Except some of them are like cloaked and bigger. And so like you fight them, you navigate the level. Level's not too bad. There's some enemies that like summon in tougher bad guys to fight, but there is one dragon that you can fight or run away from, or you can do what I do and cheese him from the window with a bow. And then you fight the worst boss in the entire game. Completely optional. The only boss that gives you your souls outside of the arena.
Yep.
The boss that probably cost me the bulk of my embers. That is the Nameless King.
Yeah.
So the Nameless King is a big knight, essentially, with an electric javelin who rides on top of a dragon. So it's a 2-phase fight. Phase 1, you're trying to bring down his dragon. Phase 2, you fight him one-on-one. The thing that makes this fight so obnoxious is that you're fighting on like a cloud. And it throws off the depth perception in a serious way, where like you're whiffing so many hits trying to hit this dragon. And the dragon has like a one-shot fire thing that can trap you. the Nameless King has some attacks that can really just put the hurt on you. And then once you finally manage to take the dragon down, you get a really cool cutscene of the Nameless King like absorbing the dragon's power.
Yeah.
And then you just fight one of the like the millennia of this game. You fight this hyper aggressive, if you're not perfect fighting him kind of boss fight.
Yeah.
And I almost just gave up on him and didn't beat him on my playthrough, but I eventually persevered and got through, but man.
Yeah. Because it's definitely this fight, like, it does up the bullshit factor a lot, because it's just like you said, the ground and the sides and the sky all look like basically the same, so depth perception is off, and it has some kind of cheap moves, and it's like both the dragon is flying around, the Nameless King is jumping around, and so if you're locked on, like, your camera is just going crazy, it's constantly getting jerked into like the ground or something like that, and so it's not like, there's some bullshit parts of this fight, but it's also one of the fights where I feel like there's a lot of times where you're, like, when you die to it, most of the time you're like, I could see myself beating this stuff. Like, I know how to beat this. Like, it's not one where you're just like crashing your head against the wall and being like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing here. It's like, I know how to beat this. I'm just frustrated at the tediousness of like all the little things you've got to do, aka Sekiro.
Yeah. Well, and for me, it just feels like if the game wasn't fighting me, then it would feel a lot more satisfying. Because I think the boss would be difficult and satisfying on its own if you're fighting it on solid ground and
like, it's a cool thing.
Fighting the camera and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't think I think the past few times I've gone into this boss fight, I don't even lock on.
No, not for phase 1 for sure. Phase 2, I did, but yeah. So ultimately,
and this is also like, normally in these games I ignore like the armor, I just wear what I think looks cool. This is the only fight where I've ever been like, what has the best like electricity resistance?
Let's put on some lightning buff for sure. So, tough fight, optional. You don't have to come here at all. You don't have to fight him at all. But like, if you're going through the whole game, this is the like millennia of this game. So you persevere through him. You go back to
the Grand Archives.
The Grand Archives, which is your weird library in Dark Souls 3. Really weird.
Yep.
You can dip your head in wax.
Yeah.
To not be cursed by these hands that reach out of the books and the ground.
Yep.
And then the wax will eventually wear off. Like, if you're waxed, this area is not bad.
Yeah.
It's just kind of knowing that you're supposed to do that.
Yeah, like, because it's a completely optional thing. It doesn't explain what it is. It's just like you happen to do it, and you notice that. You notice that you're not getting cursed anymore, and like, so basically it becomes run from like little wax place to little wax place.
Yeah, I think there's like two or three of them.
Yeah, but you kind of like run through the level, and it's like by the time the last one wears off, you get to the next one, you kind of re-up it.
It's also another one of those just like, not super labyrinthian, but like we're moving things, we're like hopping off this ledge onto this shelf, running here kind of thing. You're getting attacked by another one of those, the boss from earlier we talked about that could duplicate itself. There's one in here that's not a boss, and
the sage. Yeah,
you hit it and then it disappears and moves up, and then you hit it and it disappears and move up, and eventually you can kill it at the top and it won't respawn. I got invaded here as well.
Yep. There's also, like you mentioned, there's a lot of sort of platformy things in this part of it, and this is before FromSoft had like a dedicated jump button, so you kind of just had to like hope that you could do the platforming correctly.
So like, I don't hate it.
No.
It's not my favorite.
No.
Eventually you work through the library, you get onto the roofs, you work your way out, you're fighting some gargoyles, then you work your way up the steps, fighting through just kind of basically an army, and you make your way to the princes, which is a pretty cool fight where Lorien and Lothric are up there. I think Lothric is the sickly one.
Yes.
And so he's up there in his bed. Lorien fights you. You're like, man, this guy's pretty tough, but he's like stuck on his knees. He's doing a lot of like casting, like he'll swing his sword and a big beam of energy will come out of it. And he can teleport, but it's pretty telegraphed. It's not too bad. And then where the gimmick or difficulty of this fight comes in is after you kill him, his brother comes down, gets on his back, and revives him. So no matter how many times you kill Lorien, he will be brought back to life by Lothric. So you have to kind of kill them together. And so that because like
and it's hard to hit Lothric. Like basically
they have their own like hitboxes.
Yeah. Like you either gotta do a move that can hit both of them, or you gotta take out Lorien, and then while Lothric is down, you gotta get him, but then the move where he revives Lorien is like a big AoE. So it's like you run in, you get your damage in, and then you run away. Kind of like Renala a little bit. Like a much harder Renala fight.
Yeah, so it's cool. It's a cool idea. I like it. I think it's interesting. It's another one of the like really famous kind of Dark Souls 3 fights. I didn't find it too difficult.
No.
Because like I said, a lot of it's
especially
telegraphed.
Like towards the end of the game too.
And yeah, you've dealt with much worse at this point. So yeah, then after killing Lorien and Lothric, you have all of the Lords of Cinder that you need, and you can unlock the Kiln of the First Flame, which you open up. You have the Firekeeper open it up for you from Firelink Shrine, and you go through, and there are some Black Knights on the other side, and you fight them, similar to Dark Souls 1. Again, a lot of that symbolism and imagery, except like graphics and everything have gotten a lot better. So like the world is folding in on itself and stuff, which looks really cool and is kind of expounded on in the DLC, which we didn't really touch on that too much. We're not really going to cover the DLC that much on this episode. Like I think it's cool. It definitely adds a lot to the experience. It's worth playing if you play Dark Souls 3.
Has some of the coolest zones and bosses.
It's tough.
Yeah.
The Painted World one is kind of like one contained zone and like a really beefy boss fight.
Yeah.
Whereas the Ringed City is more of like, here's another little world to explore, a little zone and things to go do. And they both add a lot, especially the Ringed City one adds stuff to the lore.
Yeah.
And then
brings back a lot of Dark Souls 2 zones.
Yeah. So they're cool. I'm actively I beat the first one. I'm in like the first third of the Ringed City currently. So I'm enjoying them. I'm remembering like how much of the Ringed City stuff is like when I think Dark Souls 3, I think of those spots. Yeah, like it really doesn't feel optional. Like the Ringed City feels like the final bit of Dark Souls 3. Yeah. So those are definitely cool. They're definitely worth checking out. They're at this point, if you decide to hop into Dark Souls 3, they're probably just part of the experience where they're super cheap.
Yeah.
So definitely worth checking out. But for the base game itself, this is it. You fight the Soul of Cinder, which has 2 phases. It's essentially like a knight. It's the knight from the cover, basically.
Yeah.
And phase 1 is it just being all of the players.
Yeah.
And using all their, like, it has like a magic build and a strength build and a dex build, and it has all these different moves that it cycles through. Phase 2, it becomes Gwyn.
Yep.
And the like music from Dark Souls 1, kind of like a version of it, starts playing again, and very nostalgic for that final boss fight. I don't think it's too difficult, especially coming off of the Nameless King.
Yeah.
Like I beat it on my first try, but very cinematic, very cool. Like FromSoftware knows how to finish a game.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you've got the Soul of Cinder here. You've got Gehrman in Bloodborne. You've got in Elden Ring. The Elden Beast, I feel like, kind of actually detracts from the experience a little bit.
I was going to say.
But Radigan and like the theme music playing through, like it's very epic. So this is no different. It might not be the hardest boss in the game, but you feel like you've done the thing, you've accomplished it. And so similarly to Elden Ring, once you beat him, you are given some of the choices based on what you did throughout the game of like which ending you want to go through. Yeah,
which like 2 of them are doable pretty much regardless. Like you can either continue the Age of Fire or end the Age of Fire. Like I think continue the Age of Fire is just like the default.
Yes.
And then end the Age of Fire, I think you have to like talk to the maiden again.
You have to have given her eyes. So it is a little bit, you have to have done that optional area and found those. But yeah, then you can end it.
Yeah. And then there's another ending that is the Usurpation of Fire, which you have to like go through this big complicated quest line where there's like 3 or 4 different NPCs that you kind of have to like find multiple times throughout the entire thing. At some point you get married.
Yeah, by married you like stab her in the heart with your special sword.
I was kind of unclear about how the whole marriage ceremony worked if you are killing the bride. But yeah, it is a weird part.
I also heard that apparently that like if you do the Firekeeper one, as it's like panning out and exiting, you have control of your character, and if you kill the Firekeeper right then, it triggers another ending.
Oh, huh. I did not know that.
I don't know. Like I didn't do that, but
there's not an achievement for that one.
No, it's not an achievement ending. I did test like because that was the ending I chose as the Firekeeper ending.
Yeah.
I could move my character around as like the camera was fading out. So I was like, I could see that being a thing you could do.
Yeah.
Because Elden Ring's the same way where like you have your 3 achievement endings, but then you can also do like the Dunk Eater and the death.
Yeah.
What's her face ending? Fia. So it makes sense that there would be like some other endings that are not like one of the main ones. But yeah. So that is Dark Souls 3.
Yes.
Ready to move into our verdicts?
I am ready.
Well, then let's go ahead and move into our verdicts for Dark Souls 3. So the way that we rank games on the FN Gamers review scale is with the classic A through F grading system, except that above A, there is S, and S is a masterpiece. So between S being a masterpiece and F being hot garbage, where would you put Dark Souls 3, Dylan?
Like we've talked about for the other 2 games, like I am going to rate this one an S personally, just because I think for me, I just love Dark Souls as a series. And all of the Dark Souls games in their own way are masterpieces. That said, I think I've made that declaration and then like caveated it with the, like if you're not a fan of Dark Souls or if you are not playing this for nostalgia, this is a, X or, B or C or whatever I rated some of the other ones. This one, I would say, even if you aren't like a FromSoftware Dark Souls person, I would still say that this game holds up and still maintains like an A, like high A or S tier, even if you're not. There is like, even without nostalgia, I feel like this game is still good. I feel like this game still holds up. Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, I still think they're S games because I love them and I played them at a time and place where they were the newest thing. And so I've gotten to kind of go through with the progression. Dark Souls 3 is, in my opinion, a pretty modern game. It still feels good. It still runs well. It's still easily accessible. It looks pretty dang great for like a game. And like the DLC is super cool. And there's just so many areas of this game that I like. And, like we talked about earlier, I think any of the Dark Souls games that you're going to play, you're going to have to look at the lore from someone else, pretty much. This one, I think, does have the cool lore that also kind of tells you everything you need to know about 1 and 2, and is just kind of like, it ties everything together and feels complete. By the end of it, you're kind of like sort of semi-ending the cycle, especially if you do the DLCs. And so I would highly, recommend playing this game, even if you're not the biggest like FromSoftware or Dark Souls fan. This is not one you need nostalgia to get through, and that's why I personally give it an S. But also, I think it is, like I said, high A, maybe an S, even without that.
Yeah, for me, I'm giving this one an A. I think that there's just some areas and some zones and some BS classic FromSoft. There are a couple FromSoft games that I can overlook some of the like BS and still justify giving the game an S.
Yeah.
For Dark Souls 3, it lands at like a strong A. There are just a couple areas, a few things that I think hold it back from being that true masterpiece. But that being said, like, this is a fantastic experience, and it's one that grew on me. Like, I think there's some growing pains. There's some learning the language of the game, like similar to other FromSoft games. And even after playing it before, mostly co-op with you, and then playing some of the other Dark Souls games, like going back through it and really kind of just sinking into it on my own, I gained like a deeper appreciation for Dark Souls 3, and then going through all the lore and the story stuff and a lot of that finally clicking. Like, I really enjoyed revisiting Dark Souls 3, and I think that if you're interested in the series, this is definitely a good place to start.
Yeah.
And if you enjoy it, then you can go ahead and try to do the history lesson that is Dark Souls 1 and 2. But Dark Souls 3, like you said, still feels like a modern contemporary game that you could get through. And at this point, like, there's no shame in it. There are so many resources out there that can help you learn how to get through this game, how to learn its language, understand what it's asking of you as a player.
Yeah. And it's still active enough, at least the time of recording this in 2024, that if you want help to summon people for like helping you with all the bosses, you can do that.
Yeah, even like, I think you could probably just find other players' summon signs in front of bosses and stuff, but if not, you could find like a Reddit or some Discords or stuff where people would be willing to hop in with you for sure. So yeah, I really like Dark Souls 3. I enjoyed it quite a bit on this replay. I definitely think it's worth your time and worth checking out. With all that being said, as far as housekeeping goes, this was it for the Dark Souls games, but it's not it for Dark Souls month. Our next episode will be us re-ranking and ranking for the first time on the podcast all of the FromSoftware games that are Souls-likes. Yeah, exactly. That are Souls-likes, that are kind of like, this brand, this arm of FromSoft's portfolio.
Yeah, I was going to say pretty much
Demon Souls
forward.
Minus Armored Core, probably. It might get an honorable mention, but it doesn't really fit this category. But when we say rank FromSoft games, the first thing that pops in your head is probably, what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Like, you understand the assignment, what we mean when we say that. So,
yeah. And if you're one of those people that's like, oh, they're definitely going to talk about Kingsfield, and they're definitely going to talk about all the old Armored Core games, and they're definitely going to talk about that one Monster Hunter game that they made.
No, we're not.
You're wrong. You need to go outside and get off the internet for a little bit.
Exactly. So yeah, that is our next episode. We're going to do a YouTube video where we rank all of the FromSoft games, but then we're going to like really kind of pick it apart on the podcast.
Yeah. Like if for some reason, like you want the short condensed version and don't feel like listening to us, that'll be on YouTube. But the big long version where we actually talk about why we like these in more than just like a minute clip, that'll be on the big episode. And then the other video we've got coming out this month for Dark Souls month is going to be kind of a little bit of like a blowout of what we kind of talked about in this of just kind of going in on like where if you wanted to get into Dark Souls, like maybe you're waiting for Elden Ring's DLC to come out, where would we recommend you start? And so it's going to be 3, but like if you want to watch a video and you know hear us talk about it, that'll be the other video of just kind of like, hey, these are still cool games. Which one should you start with? How do you get into the Dark Souls?
Yeah. So definitely check that out. The last episode we'll be doing this month on the podcast is a community conversation about Souls and Souls-like games. So we have a channel in our Discord for that purpose where we have posted some questions and prompts. And if you want to be part of that episode, go in there and respond to those prompts. You can respond to one of them, all of them. You can just share your thoughts on Souls games, and we will discuss that on that final episode. So please, definitely hop in that channel, share your thoughts, and we'll discuss it then.
Yeah, and if that episode isn't super good,
it's your fault.
It's your fault because you didn't contribute, unless you did.
And another thing, like there is a question on that list of like, do you play Souls games? If not, why? So even if you don't play Souls games, I'd love to hear your feedback of like, why not? What keeps you from them? Is it is it the perceived difficulty? Is it just that you don't think they're your thing? Is it, I would love to hear from that perspective as well.
Yeah.
So we can discuss that on that episode. So even if you think, oh, well, they're doing like Dark Souls month, I don't play those games, I'm not going to bother responding. Like there is a place for you to respond to the prompt and definitely contribute to that conversation.
Yes.
And we would love to have you.
Yeah. The very small, like, crossover of people who listen to 2.5 hour episode about a game they're not going to play. Like, we would love to hear from you.
Yeah.
Please fill that out.
Right now, I'm speaking to the diehards, that are
Thank you for listening to our episode. You guys, the people who don't like Dark Souls, but did make it to the end of this episode, you're the real MVP here.
Yeah, exactly. So go respond in that channel and be part of the conversation.
And also, you'd probably like Dark Souls because you just made it through like the Dark Souls of podcasts by listening to like
8 hours.
8 hours of Dark Souls content. Like you kind of probably would like the Dark Souls experience then.
Yeah. So yeah, that's about it for housekeeping. In order to be part of that, if you're not in our Discord, definitely jump in. There's a link in every episode that we post. So join our community. We'd love to have you be part of Dark Souls community episode at the end of the month. With all that being said, this has been our Dark Souls 3 episode for Dark Souls month. Thank you all so much for listening, and praise the sun.